Good morning, this is Garrett. Uh, this is I Will Talk for 5 minutes About, the show where I talk for 5 minutes about whatever it is friends or family have asked me to. And this episode, I'm going to be talking about country living versus city living. This is a topic that was given by my brother in law, Todd Thomas. And yeah, I'm excited to tackle it, what have you. I'm going to start my timer now for 5 minutes, and once the timer goes off, and that's that, and then I'm going to be done. So, what's the difference between living in country and living in town? I've lived in both. This is eastern Montana. When my wife and I and our kids first moved back out here. I'm originally from eastern Montana. My wife's from southern Ohio, and that's where we met. That's where we spent the first 5 years of our marriage, and then we moved out here 6 years ago. And when we first moved out, we found a little place to rent north of Glendive, Montana, up on a table. And our nearest neighbors were, I think, a good 3 to 5 miles away. Our driveway was maybe a half mile from the edge of the table, and then we could look out just for miles and miles and miles and miles. See the interstate probably a good 15 miles away. You could just see forever. It was just gorgeous, and it was so quiet too. We moved from that 3, 4. I think it's been 4 years ago now. Moved into Sidney, Montana for work. I worked for ConocoPhillips as a lease operator, and they wanted me to get closer to my route in Richland County. And so we bought a house. There weren't a whole lot of houses to choose from, and I had a limited time in which I needed to use up some funds that they had given me. And so we bought this house in the middle of town on, I think, one of the busiest streets that has houses on it, and that is Lincoln Avenue. And so, we went from living miles and miles from our nearest neighbor. Kids could go outside in the middle of the summertime and just run and play for hours and hours and hours, and you didn't have to worry about it. Went from that to living on a pretty busy little street corner, and and then you're worried about if they get out into the road. We've got young kids, little kids. If they get out into the road, they might get hit. You've got in this day and age, you've got some weird people that if you're not watching, they could try and kidnap your kids and run off with them. And so just very, very different in that regard. We've really missed country living just for the freedom that we felt like our kids had, and the decrease in anxiety that we felt as parents letting them go out to play. One thing too, when you live out in the country, if your kids are noisy, little kids, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, they make noise. Your kids are noisy, and you don't really have to feel bad, for what the neighbors are hearing. And when you live in town, though, even just happy noises, not to mention if they start fighting or whatever, you're just like, oh, guys, let's keep it down. And you still have kind of an inside voices mentality even outside. So that's a disadvantage I see. Obviously, you live in town, you live in a city, and you have more access to groceries. That became the biggest downside, obviously, to living out in the country is if it's half an hour one way to get to the grocery store, you don't want to have forgotten anything when you make your weekly trip. You want to make it count. You want to get everything that you need to. And then, too, especially if you've got inclement weather that might cause issues in the winter or whatever, you want to stock up in case you might get stuck up there. Montana from time to time does have some big snowstorms. And, you want to have a full freezer, pantry, and whatnot, just in case. But it's been nice. I mean, in town, I can get to the grocery store in 30 seconds if my wife wants something for dinner to make it, and so that's cool. I will say, there's advantages, disadvantages to both, but especially with all these kids, we've got 7 kids. We keep dreaming of living in the country, raising our children the rest of the way, out on a farm someplace with some acreage, some trees for them to climb, a stream or whatnot for them to fish in, just wide open spaces for them to run around with, and get some exercise, not be inside all the time. I like video games and Netflix as much as anybody, but it's nice to have something they can unplug and go do. So anyway, that's my 5 minutes on country living versus city living. Thank you, Todd, for the topic. And I guess with that, I don't have any more topics for the time being. But this has been kind of a fun exercise. I might just ask my kids and my wife for some more topics and see what they come up with. I was also thinking about having some of my kids tackle this as well. Give them a topic and give them 5 minutes and let them record what they will, say what they will. Could be entertaining. I would enjoy that for future reference, to be able to look back and see some of the things that they said, or what they used to look like. We do that, looking back 5 years, 10 years now at when they were little. So anyway, we'll see. But thanks for watching, and God bless.